Guys, so just for some updates, I'm still doing everything, to fix the situation that's been going on with the being followed around to all my jobs. Every job that I've gotten since 2020 has resulted in some sort of issue where the employer is either being contacted or people are showing up there, posting photos of me, stickers of me, things that I guess they think it's funny or maybe a joke to, find someone in a space of suffering and do a still frame on their face while they're crying or, not feeling their best and post it everywhere or, whatever, what have you. I don't even know. I can't even keep up with the lies that have been told about me, even as recently as with my deliveries. Um, 2 weeks ago, this Monday, yesterday, I believe, that just passed, I was in the middle of a delivery, 11:30 in the morning. All of a sudden, the entire application went offline, no warning, no nothing, and I haven't been able to log back in. And then the way that delivery applications work is that you can apply to them even if you are not permitted to work, or they say there's no demand, or they say you did some too many mistakes, or your arrival times were too long, or what have you. You're permitted to re-sign up every 90 days. So there are people who have been doing this for many, many years, as their main source of income. For me, however, despite the fact that I have not done anything wrong, there have been just a lot of inconsistent reports and callings and just harassments, very similar and very in alignment with exactly what was going on at all of the brick and mortar jobs that I've gotten. I've also, considering that I have far more education than a bachelor's degree could provide, and when you add in real world experience and the implementation of electronic medical records and technological understandings and hiring and firing with regards to the processes of promotional modeling, spokes modeling, events, trade show staff, things of that nature, I have a real difficult time trying to find any or all reasonings as to why I would be, out of everyone in the workforce, not working. I've worked 7 days of the week for the last 2 years. I started working right after Weston was born at the Ping Pong Social Club, and I worked full time 5 or 6 days out of the week for approximately, I believe, 11 months. And I was working the last 2 months. So after 9 months there, I began driving Lyft, and I was doing DoorDash, Lyft, and working there all at the same time, and literally working 7 out of 7 days. And I had a single room that I was renting near Irving Park in Lamont for $700 a month, Xavier and I was paying the entire thing, myself. He hasn't been able to find work. And then following that, I got the apartment, the Granville apartment, and I was promised, no one there was paying rent, and I was promised that all of the rent that I was paying would be saved and returned so that I could use it for a down payment on a house, that everyone understood what had gone on and what was going on with my jobs and all of this, and that the deliveries were supposed to be customized to a situation that would work given the circumstances. It went from being, I would say, $1,500, to $1,700 a week of reimbursement to about $500 to $800 a week. And I was still somehow finding a way to manage with that until 2 weeks ago, Monday, when they removed the app from circulation for me. And then I've been warding off all of these nefarious, narratives. It feels like my life is being lived on 6 different days that are all being perceived the same day, with a different group of individuals keeping track of what goes on day to day, and with a different narrative running in the background. Like, Monday is Monday and Tuesday is also Monday, but for a different authority, if that makes sense. And it's inconsistent, and and it doesn't really have any known causality that I can make sense of. There may be other people who can, but I truly cannot. And it's affected my life significantly. If on the first Monday I have the understanding that there is an expectation and I'm following through with that expectation, but then the next day comes, it seems like I'm being looked at as if my behaviors are, weird or unexpected when I get up and go to work or write another website. I wrote another website a few days ago, or yesterday actually, for AI implementation, website development, new business development, which have always been something, some skills that I've been able to do fairly easily, especially with the AI components that we have available to us now. And so I, more than qualify for many, 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 many different jobs. It's gotten to the point where things are being nefariously externally controlled, even though the authority in the situation has promised that they would not be. My Cadillac, as you know, was stolen in 2022. And then I bought a new car, this car that I'm in right now. And it seems as though I was being, played to pay just under $1,300 or $1,200 a month that was just basically being intercepted by individuals who were claiming they were owed. I don't really know. It's very confusing, very difficult for me to keep track of or rely upon any one of the authorities in the situation to be consistent from day to day, which is causing a lot of issues for me. It was right before the time that I was about to, I was in my apartment for a year and a half, ready to bring my children back in and create a format that permitted, a safe space for us to spend time together, et cetera, and so forth. And as I said, 7 out of 7 days a week for 2 years, working anywhere from 6 to 14-hour shifts, just to make, $500 to $800 a week. It's a lot, and I've been doing this and sustaining this workflow for a very long time. And when, that becomes a problem, there's always this inquiry of, or this kind of claim that I need to pivot, that I'm not pivoting. I need to pivot. I need to be flexible. I need to do this. I need to have other things. Well, my ability to do any of the things that I've been doing, staffing, promos, deliveries, personal driving, administrative, anything, depends upon very heavily and very largely the nefarious, kind of malicious bothering that's taking place. Some examples that I'm currently dealing with. I know I've told you guys about the lines in multiple times where my voice has been used, my situation has been used to speak in ways that I traditionally do not. I have gone through with a higher authority and discussed a lot of different concepts. I intentionally chose to withdraw myself from a lot of content consumption across all platforms, from music listening, from even TV watching. And there was just like 2 or 3 movies that we were listening to when I would get very anxious when it would be bedtime. And even that, I'm not doing anymore. And in that detox, if you will, from any sort of media consumption, the point was, in looking through everything that I had been going through and have already overcome, there was a nefarious third party external to my situation who communicated in no, uncertain terms that there was profit to be had in my suffering and in my situation, and that they were willing to do what needed to be done to, profit from my situation, even if it meant causing the perception of a regression with regards to old issues with PTSD that I haven't had in many, many years. Now, when things are actually happening, they have repeatedly written them off as a PTSD response or something along that lines, or along those lines rather, instead of naming it what it really is and coming up with solutions for that. So, I did go ahead and make another documentation of the events that have been taking place, recently. But it was communicated to me that they didn't want me working anymore because of those nefarious people stealing that money. I paid over I want to say between 20 and 23 grand for one bedroom at the Granville apartment, one bedroom with a small restroom, under the impression that the money would be returned at the end of the lease agreement, which was May 2027, so that I could use it for the down payment of a house. Now, no one else in the building was paying rent. Those people were either squatting or living there after their leases had expired for some reason or another that I don't have clear communication or proof of. But to be, one of the only people in that area who's paying rent, even the woman who works as the landlord there has an apartment there and doesn't pay rent. It's ridiculous. I was the only one paying. And for some reason, they, after promising me that that's where I needed to stay and kind of forcing me to stay there, I attempted to leave when they first started with issues again. So they did the flooding my lobby with big boxes. Big moving boxes stacked 7 or 8 feet tall on some days, of HIV testing kits, of Bibles, of condoms, calling me GoPro solo hobo, and writing my legal name and leaving it there with, a photo packet of printed out photos of me, crying for assistance during my pregnancy with Weston, when I was, actively calling for help, calling for housing assistance and for solutions to the situations that were going on. It's not funny. It's not productive. And it's, causing a lot of issues just in general, none of which have anything to do with PTSD. It isn't a PTSD response to not want someone to flood your lobby with a bunch of boxes addressed to GoPro solo hobo with items that create some sort of inflection of promiscuity when you have a history of being sexually assaulted in cold blood after being forced to walk back and forth from the O'Hare area to downtown for several years at a time intermittently, right? Can you imagine being so exhausted after walking for 4 or 5 days with just a few, 6-7 hour periods of sleep that were uncomfortable, that felt unsafe, that you had to pack up all these things, bring them all back, push a 300-pound cart. That was not a fun time for me. And I didn't do anything wrong to deserve it in the first place. So to go through something like that and then to have someone approach you and say, you look awful, like you haven't slept in weeks, let me get you a hotel room, no strings attached. Let me look out for you this one time. You've been a really good person. You've, spent a lifetime of building others and businesses and supporting others, doctors, CEOs, corporate executives, and everyone in between, your children, your family, your friends, etc. Let me look out for you. Let me get you a room. And I say, okay. And I go to the room and then I'm too exhausted to run away and I'm being sexually assaulted, right? So this is not acceptable. It's not constitutional in any way, shape, or form, nor have I ever agreed to take part in anything like this. And for that reason, it was deemed that my apartment was the safest place for us to stay and that would not be, even up for negotiation or to be, discussed further until there was a better living situation created in the understanding that I have always been capable, willing, able-bodied with regards to work, promotions, even something as simple as work from home style of working, where I would be creating copyright or website development or helping businesses with the implementation of AI features that are easy to use and that I could roll out either in person or on the computer remotely. With that being said, it's been shocking. It's now 28 days since I've been in my apartment. And it's now been 2 weeks since Monday since I have been working full time. I've had little odds and ends of income. I worked a promo for a group of, it was like a kind of an inspirational public speaking style of event for some children ages 8 to 16, I want to say, in the North Chicago area. And you know, I was paid for that work. That was, I want to say, a week ago Saturday, that I did that job, you know, and then I've been applying to little gigs and odds and ends jobs that I can find on Craigslist, like power washing, you know, for 5 hours for $20 an hour. 2 people are needed. I applied for Xavier and I both. That would have been $440 in 2 days, $220 for each of us. And they, you know, did not allow that to go through. They said that was not safe. They could not have us leaving the area. I have literally gotten into my vehicle and driven as far as possible, and it feels as though there is some sort of bungee attached to my bumper that when I reach a certain area, they just pull me back in, you know, and I do not have a clear identity on the authority or what they're planning from day to day, or what could be causing this, but they are certainly communicating with me and others, you know, about these things repeatedly. And it's a no-win situation as it stands. I need there to be solutions that are in alignment with the flow of, you know, living a lifestyle that doesn't include being subjected to anyone else's victimizations or abuses. And I need time to focus on rebuilding my own life before these people keep on pulling me into the line of fire to help them with theirs. With that being said, I've been accused multiple times when I've had like $80 in my pocket, but my rent's due in 2 weeks and I'm saving for my rent. They have come into my apartment at Granville. They have taken things from me, you know, on a number of occasions. And there are police reports for that. Again, they fall right in line with the consistency of the rest of this case, which is no follow-up, no solutions. No one has paid me back. Several thousands of dollars have been withdrawn from my bank accounts. I have the debit cards in my wallet. I went into Whole Foods and I went grocery shopping. And I said to myself, you know what? If what they're saying to me is true, that everything is going to be fine, that they're, you know, arranging another apartment, etc., and so forth, I'm just going to go ahead and go grocery shopping. That's it. I'm going to go grocery shopping. I'm going to trust that when I get to the register, I will have the money that I'm supposed to have in my account as they've promised. And of course it wasn't there, you know, and then I'm there giving them 7 or 8 different debit cards that I've had over the last 2 years that have all, with the exception of 2, been subjected to some sort of fraudulent activity, underdrafting my bank accounts and taking whatever money was in there plus a deficit. I shared with you all that I got a credit card, actually, not a debit card, my first credit card with a $300 credit limit on it. I can't even file a claim with the FDIC. They maxed out the card right after I got it. It only had a $300 limit. I used the card one time for approximately $40 worth of a purchase. And then when I tried to use it again the next day, it said declined. I called. I don't know if the call was boxed or intercepted, which has been another common theme. But all of the promises that they make for reimbursement and for recovery and for restoration with regards to giving me back my items, my money, my property, my homes, my, you know, all of these things, they have not followed through. When Xavier and I were staying next to the police station at Addison, right near Wrigley Field, numerous issues occurred. I have a receipt right here. I was pulled over, surrounded by 8 or 9 officers, at least, you know, yelled at to put my hands on the wheel. I have a receipt for the stop. You know, yelled at to put my hands on the wheel and not move. They opened my trunk. They went through my wallet. They went through my purse. They went through my bag. If you recall, to the early set of issues that I've reported consistently, when I was assaulted in 2019, the very first time I was ever assaulted, I was stabbed on my side body by 3 women with screwdrivers. The police in that set of circumstances took some things from out of my wallet or in my glove box that were valuable, money or other things. And it feels like they've just been curating repeats or copycats of all of those things that I've already gotten through and healed myself from and repaired myself from. No one followed up with me. I never got victim services. I never got any compensation for anything that's been lost from me. Nothing at all. And with regards to that credit card, when I called the customer service under the impression that it did not ever get, the call never actually went through to them, whoever answered impersonating them said, oh yeah, there's no available balance. I said, well, I only used it one time for $40. It was supposed to be a $3,000 credit card. When it arrived, they said, oh, you were approved for up to $3,000, but they decided on $300. No, that's not the way it was, communicated to me when I agreed to take this credit card. It was a $3,000 spending limit. When it arrived, you guys offered $300, and then I spent $40 on that. They underdrafted that card, saying that I owed them a $100 membership fee and that there was no available balance on a $300 card. How do I call the FDIC and file fraud on those transactions when there's no transactions? It's just this alleged credit card company, and it's reputable. It's a reputable credit card company. It's not some fly-by-night organization. It's a major known bank. And, when I try to call over and over and over again, it's just the same, as my father would call it, shuck and jive that they've always been giving. It's just lie after ignore it, after, make a promise, after insure, after, just all of this bullshit. It's just been nothing but lies, nothing but lies. When we were at the apartment, the very first day that it was communicated to me that they didn't want us there anymore, or that it was the date that they didn't want us there anymore, I attempted to go and get a storage. I was still working full time. I packed all of my belongings. I wrapped my sofa in movers cellophane. I packed everything I had. I attempted to go load it into my vehicle. They would not permit us out the door. We were completely sanctioned to that unit, and we were told, a number of times as I communicated that was the safest place for us. And until there was another safe, acceptable living situation for us to go to, we would be staying there. And I'm very unclear as to how they did an exact repeat, but minus the battering ram from the Montclair apartments. When I was living in the Montclair apartments, I brought, a bed sheet to Harwood Heights law enforcement. I explained to them that, my door was unlocked when I woke up, that I had reinstalled new locks, that no one from even property management had copies of those keys or locks, but that yet somehow, there was no sign of forced entry, but somehow my door was open throughout the night and there were stains all over my bed sheet that I was laying on. I was scared. I didn't know what to do. I put it in a plastic bag. I secured it. I brought it to law enforcement on a live video on my previous Instagram. Law enforcement came to the lobby. They collected the sheet. There's been no follow-up from that. No charges filed. No victim services. So, and that was one of many situations that was taking place at that apartment. Yet for some reason, rather than communicating with me in a way that adults communicate with each other, there were 3 members of fake law enforcement who were permitted, with the use of a battering ram, to batter ram my door down, to destroy my belongings, to force me out of my home. And with very little, time to prepare. I had to get rid of the majority of my belongings again. And it has been, it's perceived that for some reason, some low-life individual or some individual with a complete and total lack of compassion, understanding, legal issues, constitutional rights, any morsel of ethical compass or direction, and God forbid they have any sort of creativity. They've just been doing all of the same victimizations that I have already endured over and over and over. There was a second bludgeoning. Look, then they told me, no, there wasn't a bludgeoning, that was for an apparatus to be installed to keep my face young and tight so that I didn't have to have any more Botox or Juvederm or Restylane or Rivanesse, etc., and so forth. I wake up one morning, I look like I'm fucking 18 years old. I'm loving it. I'm like, okay, I see you. The next morning I wake up, it looks like someone, put me to sleep on some sort of uneven surface. And there's all these patterns and lines and shit all over my face. I don't know how to control it. I don't know how to cope with it. I don't know how to, live through it. I don't know what is expected from day to day. I am unclear as to who is communicating with me in the position or role of authority. I'm concerned about what's going on with my significant other. He wants to remain nameless now after 4 years of being included in my videos, because he's, feeling some pressure as well. And I don't really understand it. So, with that being said, I have been subjected to numerous threats if I share certain things. I have not been given an outlet for communicating those things to anyone for the purpose of making them stop. I have only been ignored or responded to appropriately with a few days of appropriate action being taken, surveillance, protection, etc., and so forth. And then as soon as I began to believe that those things are real and that, those things are accurate and reliable, they start the shit up again. I'm very unclear as to how I could be living in the United States of America with a lease agreement, paying my rent every month, working 7 out of 7 days a week, but none of my neighbors pay anything. The money was all taken. Nothing was given back to me. And then they were stalking me to my lobby, piling up boxes full of that paraphernalia that said all of those terrifying things, combining those with those slanderous, narratives. And there have been no arrests, to my knowledge, no investigations. I've requested numerous, and I mean more than probably 20 times, for there to be an internal affairs review, for there to be a private third-party investigation conducted as to what has been going on, for my content, geotags, photos, etc., to be reviewed, and for there to be a chronological timeline based on the AI that is relevant and completely useful, based on the forensics with regards to my bank accounts. Where have I deposited? Where have I withdrawn? Where have I spent? When have I been receiving money on a regular basis? In what city and town was I at? What location was the ATM? There are easy, very simple to use methods for cleaning up and removing deception. Who is around me on these days when my voice is being, broadcast through my own body in a tone, dialect, candor, speech, verbiage that I don't use on a normal basis ever? Who's around me during those times? Who's permitting that? Who's receiving? Who's watching? Who's in the comments? Who's in the, these trends, they're not, fly-by-night pieces of information that don't mean anything. When I'm taking photos of someone's license plate, chances are it's not because they were just driving behind me innocently. Chances are, if I've got a photo of someone's license plate in my car, it's because one of multiple things. Either I've perceived them to be following me for several days, either I recognize their vehicle but don't know how I know them or what they're doing there, or because they're doing something to victimize or to create a predatory environment, like, brake checking or speeding up on my bumper or flashing their high beams and blowing their horn for no reason, right? So if the rhetoric says that because I've gone through that, they wanted, someone to understand what I meant, they were clarifying what I meant, that's why they did it again. Listen, you could go to any YouTube or Google and you can ask for a video demonstration of what it means to have someone, pull up onto your bumper and flash their high beams. And Google will have a million examples. You don't need to continue to curate all of the things that I've already gone through, right? And they did something very similar. I want to mention when I was at Montclair and they batter rammed my door down, one of the supposed sheriffs in sheriff's uniform was actually a nuclear technology former employee of the Cardiovascular Institute where I worked with Dr. Parag Doshi. When I was working there, that woman was a nuclear technologist running nuclear stress tests. And she is not a police officer. And I've called numerous times to verify. That is the woman who came into my place, grabbed me by my face, with multiple other people in uniform, alleging that they were working for the sheriff's department and, forced me from my unit. It was later communicated that my name was never removed from that unit. I don't know if it's still on there today, but that new groups of individuals were living in that unit with the unit being listed in my name still. It's very confusing for me. They allege that they did the same thing at Montclair. I went there probably 12 hours after I left the building, and there was already someone living in my unit. There were external exhaust fans installed in the windows. There was activity from within the unit. I don't understand. How is it possible that I am doing all of the right things, engaging in nothing unethical, nothing unlawful, doing everything I know how to do, and even still, I've been eating one meal a day or less on average for at least the last 4 months, at least. I am very, very thin. I have dramatically decreased my diet, and that's not because I don't get hungry. I do get hungry. That's because I don't have any money. I have been working like an animal to support these causes, these needs, these bills, after I'm communicated that everything's been taken care of. And then my money, as soon as I'm making it, they're just finding another reason. If I'm told, oh no, your car is taken care of, you don't have to worry about that. We found the person who stole the Cadillac. They took care of the car in exchange, right? Okay, great. That's what they communicate to me. Fabulous, right? But then because I'm not spending that $800 that month, all of a sudden they curate that I have 7 days of heavy menstrual flow. I've got to go through 1 box of pads every single day. I'm ravenously hungry. I've got to buy 3-4 meals a day. Maybe my phone, that I'm using stops working. I've got to go pay $90 to get my phone unlocked. The screen's not working. I went to bed with my phone intact, sleeping on my bed with the phone right next to my head. I woke up, the entire fiberglass on the back was shattered. I'm using a case, it's safe, but that's another $90. So I'm living my life in a way where I don't have a social structure. I don't have any friends. I'm not allowed any contact with mostly anyone. My family is under the misconception that I am lying about everything that I have gone through, or a lot of it. They're very confused as to how to handle everything. I just went to the suburbs to speak with my godmother and try to communicate to her what's been going on. They have communicated to me that I have a video camera in one of my eyes. The first person who bludgeoned me thought that I had a video camera, was trying to smash the box by hitting me repeatedly with the tire iron. They've said they've called me a cyborg. They've called me a robot. I assure you, blood comes from my body when I menstruate each month, and blood comes from my body if I have a cut or a contusion of some kind. I bruise. There are bruise marks on my ankles and wrists sometimes, which would indicate that it would be highly likely that someone were moving my physical body, either by holding me by my ankles and my wrists or something along those lines. Why would I have bruising around my ankles and wrists? Why would I have that with no recollection of any physical injury? And so, all of these things together caused me to believe most certainly that there has not been an acceptable solution thus far for moving past this. And that my best bet is to just attempt to continue to gain freelance forms of employment. And when I stop moving, it gets way worse. It gets way worse. For the last at least year, I have been driving around the Chicagoland area all day, every day, 14 to 18 hours some days. When we were going to the visits at Hillside, when I was going to work downtown and then going back to Oak Brook and then going up north to Lake Villa. And then, this is a lot of commuting that I've been doing for the majority of my day, every single day. And now I'm in a space where when I stop moving around, the drama that surrounds me, the name calling, the perpetuating of false narratives, the blatant intentional misconduct with regards to intentionally with premeditation and planning and curated engineering causing and inflicting emotional distress, the plan spoken aloud to quote unquote regress PTSD, all of that is unlawful and unconstitutional. And I don't know how else to say it, but no one can live this way. There's no one that can live this way. And so when I stay moving, that is limited. When I am stuck somewhere, that's all those Jeeps driving around with those little ducks on their windshields. It's like that's how many sitting ducks are just being blatantly abused and psychologically manipulated and just fucked with, and it's sick. It is sick. It is every single time I see one of those Jeeps driving around with those ducks, I can't even believe it. It's like a joke. Like they think it's a joke. It's not funny. And I can't help myself but to wonder, have they ever been on the receiving end of any of this pressure, antagonism, lines of questioning, interrogations, accusations, extortion attempts? Because it's not funny, and it is enough to cause someone's entire identity and reputation to be in question. There are certain things that I'm willing to do to survive, and then there are certain things that I'm not willing to do to survive, right? And I have spoken those things to my trusted loved ones and other advocates a number of times. I am not going to be able to survive in certain circumstances. They have made that incredibly, true and certain. And I don't know at this point, at this juncture, I'm 6 years in from being intermittently stalked and harassed, sexually assaulted, the 2 bludgeonings, the stabbing, being punched in my head for no reason by strangers, falling asleep at one point and being woken up by being punched on my head, a number of things. And it's been about a year, I would say. Well, it's been about, I would say December, maybe January. It was, I want to say January. Yeah, it was January that I was bludgeoned for the most recent time. And it just looked like a transformation of character. The person was someone I trusted and, appreciated and have spent many, 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 many days and nights with, who has never harmed me. And it looked like their entire face changed. I have a video of the interaction. Their eyes were literally glowing like red and orange. That's not AI. That's not deepfake AI. I swear to God to you, I was holding the camera in my hand, looking through the lens, seeing this seething, just, it was very scary. And the person had no recollection of the event the next morning. So there's certainly been a lot that's taken place since January. Knock on wood, I haven't been subjected to any of the physical assaults that I know of. However, I am waking up sometimes with big bruising at my ankles and my wrists or my wrists that is unexplainable. I don't have any sort of recollection of injury or having harmed myself in any way, shape, or form. In addition, I do feel as though the causal issues have remained, concealed. The things that have been going on in my life have been commonly misrepresented as confusion, fear, PTSD. While I'll admit those three things have been recurring themes, most of the things that I label them accurately. So if I'm saying that something has taken place, you should rest assured that what I'm saying is reliable. And with that being said, when I'm having symptoms of PTSD, that's what I will label it as. That's what I will label it as. So in the understanding that, I'm not incapable, or unable to detect certain things that have been taking place, or ill-equipped to articulate them, I'm not quite sure what, the expectation is moving forward. And I can let you know, I don't, want to participate, nor have I signed any contracts or agreements with regards to my participation of further exploitation of the true circumstances for which I've already survived and lived through being used for any sort of entertainment feature or anything like that, with one exception. I created a show for myself called The Coco Show that is a satirical variety show that is of the comedy and rom-com origin. That's it. That is it. And that was a show that I was self-producing, that I have not had very much dialogue with anyone on further, production or, circulation. So I need some direction here. I need to understand and know that the area is safe, that, the authorities locally are still employed here, and that there is a clear line of authoritative intervention for situations like this, because there's just too much going on here to not have a clear line. With regards to the surveillance, the alleged LoJacks and audio devices that have been placed in my environment, including but not limited to internal in my body, and in my vehicle and in my apartment and in several other locations, I never say anything that I expect no one to hear. So I've been telling my children since they were very young, always, no matter what you do on the phone, no matter what you do in your house, even if you think you're alone, pretend like the FBI is always watching you. I've raised my children to think that way. I've raised, myself to think that way. So if I'm saying something out loud and it sounds to you like it is a problem, that's probably because it is a fucking problem, right? So if I'm saying it out loud, it's probably because I would need some sort of, assistance in handling whatever it is that I'm saying aloud, right? And, I'm pretty sure that goes for any and everyone in 2026. We're not, ignorant to the fact that our phones, our tech, our TVs, our you name it, all have the ability to monitor what we're doing, what we're saying, what we're watching, what we're consuming, the things we're going through, etc., and so forth. And I don't think I'm alone in that understanding. As a matter of fact, I know I'm not. And this is not a conspiracy theory by any means. This is just what it means to be alive in 2026. Can I tell you guys, I went to apply at Volvo yesterday. And when I did so, I met with a gentleman who was sitting at the front desk. He was nonchalant about my, showing up there. He didn't seem very happy to see me or welcoming. And he did seem to have a little bit of a chip on his shoulder. Maybe something was going on with his own personal life. Who knows? But when he asked me for my resume, I perceived that he was asking me for that in kind of like a flashback to the 90s kind of way. They began engaging the man who was not the manager, by the way, but they began engaging with me in a format that I have not engaged in with regards to the acquisition of employment in quite some time. Many years. It's been many years since I felt like I needed to print out my resume and hand it out. I've done it when I was completely desperate, in those first 3 years where, everything was going on with regards to the show, and then the stalking, and then the subsequent, environmental issues that took place as a result. I was under the impression that, and I could be right, I could be wrong, I to this day have not had confirmation from the authority face to face. The confirmation I receive from the authority, which is why I refer to them as the perceived authority, is usually either on the line, through email, over the phone, over text, and sometimes they identify themselves, many times they don't. So with that being said, I need a plan here. I need a way to be okay. And I'm not speaking from a perspective of psychologically. While of course we all need that, I'm more so referring to the fact that if I were incompetent psychologically for the decade plus that I worked with the most prestigious doctors in the Midwest, arguably, they would have noticed, right? And if I were psychologically inept, I wouldn't have been able to show up for work sometimes 2 to 3 jobs at the same time on the same days for 7 out of 7 days of the week for the last 2 years. And I wouldn't be able to properly handle and document the situation that has been ongoing since that time if I was really experiencing all of these issues. Lo and behold, yes, absolutely. In response to antagonisms and baiting and badgering and stalking and harassments and thefts and all of that, I have absolutely had some moments where I feel as though grace needed to be permitted to get me out of those responses. I have commonly said, all right, guys, I've reached my saturation point. I've got nothing left to give you psychologically, mentally. I've got no further explanations. I've answered about 20 hours of interrogatories. I have nothing left in the tank. I've got to get some rest. And they've still fucked with me so bad that I just say some hostile thing, right? That I would never say under normal, circumstances. And that's not wrong. Having a response like that in the line of interrogation after 6 years of harassment, stalking, etc. And then let me remind you, 10 years, almost 11, if you include the extortion from the detective David Shepard and the conditioning and coercion that I was experiencing throughout my relationship with Dylan. So we've got to get, a better line of communication. We've got to figure out where to go from here for everyone. The authority already deemed that it was unconstitutional and unlawful to have people without a safe house to live in, a safe housing situation, meaning they were not permitting structures, tents, people sleeping on the fucking sidewalks. Every person was to be matched with an apartment, and that was communicated to me directly by the higher authority since day one. So I am very, very confused as to how we've gotten back here. I'm very concerned. When the alleged sheriffs showed up to my apartment, they did appear to be TV actors. One of the sheriffs was the actor from the show Young Sheldon. One of the sheriffs was the actor from Drew Barrymore and Adam Sandler's movie, 50 First Dates. So what in the fuck is going on here is my final question. And what needs to be done about it, is kind of the second half of that final question. I know it sounds funny for me to say these things, but I'm not joking. I'm really not. If I heard someone else say these things, I would probably think the same thing. What in the fuck is going on? This lady must be imagining this. I am not, so given that we know the very first person who batter rammed my door down was actually a nuclear technologist who I worked with at the Cardiovascular Institute with Parag Doshi. It's not that far-fetched for me to know, that in this second curation, these individuals are definitely also probably not sheriffs. And so what do I do? And I did write another police report, just giving a brief update and overview as to what, from my perception, from where I'm sitting, from the communication that I've been receiving consistently as well as inconsistently, what exactly is going on, so that I can give law enforcement the opportunity or the authority or higher authority than law enforcement, the opportunity to kind of communicate any sort of expectation of me that they would have. Now, when I was stopped 2 weeks ago, my license was checked, my identity was checked, my license plate was checked, everything was deemed to be clear. They let me go, they never took me into custody. Do you know what I was stopped for? Allegedly, similar to the threats that were taking place with regards to that agency that Detective Shepard threatened to take my children with if I didn't comply with his demands during that time. Very similarly to what they communicated to me right after my son was born, my 2.5-year-old son was born, was that they were receiving hundreds of calls from strangers saying all sorts of crazy things about me. And law enforcement basically said the same thing. They said, we're receiving a number of calls about you saying that you have guns and bombs. And then the next day, my debit card was gone. That same day that my debit card was what I would perceive to be strategically stolen from my wallet, after the only people who had access were the law enforcement agents or alleged law enforcement agents that were doing that stop to ask if I had bombs or guns. P.S. The bomb sniffing dog was a golden retriever, so that's new. But after that incident took place, and I was very afraid, they were kind, those officers, they were ethical, but I was very afraid, and embarrassed. But after that took place, my debit card was gone and there was no one else with access to my belongings. So it does seem as though the intention has been to basically do a replay on the things that have already been done to harm me over the last several years. And I just want everyone to know, on the record and off, I do not consent. I have nothing to do with curating any of this. I'm afraid. I don't know where to go. I don't know what to do to hide from them when they begin doing this to us. And none of this is imagined. I just showed you a receipt for when they stopped me. And I can show you any other proof that you would like to see, given the opportunity to do so. None of this is fake. So with that being said, I'm available for personal driving. If you guys need a ride to anywhere local to Chicago or the Chicagoland area, please let me know. I would love to give you a ride there in my vehicle. I can only accommodate up to 2 people for now, because I do have some of my belongings in the car. So I'm very clean. I'm very organized. I'm a great driver. I have been doing this for quite some time. I regularly care for my vehicle, and if my vehicle were a little messy, I wouldn't come to pick up a client anyways. So you can rest assured in knowing that, you will receive a safe, clean ride if you need one. And so please feel free to inquire about that. I would love to, work for someone who is in town for a week. Maybe they need a personal driver posted outside of their hotel or apartment for that week. We can agree on a flat rate, and I can, just be there on call kind of, or on standby for that week, as well as for individual jobs. I've been looking at Chicago Executive Airport. and numerous other places for anyone who needs personal driving. Also, I have done a new website for AI implementation and new business development, specifically website development, AI implementation, and tools for strategy, marketing, and sales. And that website is live as we speak. So if that sounds like something that you need, please let me know. Any and all business that I can do in a freelance capacity, it's perceived that they've allowed someone else to, take the lead or what have you. But that's about it for tonight. I have a fantasy, that, I don't know if you've heard that song, Just Hold On, We're Going Home. I would listen to that song when I was in the height of the abusiveness, when I was being locked in, and physically assaulted, and I was very scared. And I would have this fantasy that, these FBI agents or like military, or like, I don't even know, men in black, they could be women too, in suits would like just kick the door down with guns and just, grab me and rescue me from this situation and whisk me away to this house that I've been working for since I was a 14-year-old little girl. On the record, I took my first job at 14 years old with a work permit. Off the record and on the record, I took my first job at 11 years old when I got my certified babysitter's license through the Courts Plus in Elmhurst, and I began babysitting all of the children in my parents' friend group, social group, as well as my friends and family's children. So I have been working, for a long time. That's almost 3 decades of work, and my goal has remained consistent throughout, which was purchase a home for my children and I, and that's it. That's it. That's one goal. Purchase a home for my children and I to have peaceful, enjoyable, desirable experiences in, and be safe and protected from whatever it is, whatever this mayhem is going on out here. So again, as I said, let me reiterate, marketing, sales, new business development, website development, AI tools, implementation of AI into a standard business format. I'm great at all of those. I'm working directly with, as a partner, various AI tools that are helping me draft copy in seconds. So anything is possible. And I would be happy for a small nominal fair rate to show you that with regards to your own business structure. Also, if you need a personal driver, I'm available for that as well. And for any other questions, please just go to my Facebook page. I've left a public announcement with regards to the opportunity for personal driving, and there is a contact button there. You can click on that contact button, and you can send me any inquiry that you'd like. I would be able to respond as urgently as I possibly can, not as I would like to, but as I can. So please keep that in mind, that I'm doing these things as I can, in the midst of, I don't even know what to call it. And then, I went to the suburbs. I spoke with my aunt. It seems like my family is either completely unaware of what's going on or what has gone on, or what's more likely, I know they're aware of certain parts of it, but what's more likely is that they are probably, or have been probably, subjected to a certain kind of, a certain, a certain amount of, or degree of similar treatment and actions and behaviors that I've experienced, which would cause them to feel terrified, as it has me. And therefore they would be, bullied and scared into some sort of silence. which is what I believe is accurately, taking place here. So, I think that's it for tonight. I am very tired. I am very confused and, upset and nervous about what's going on. And I was promised a lot of things, ultimate privilege, flying lessons, a new place to live. My car payment was taken care of. My debts have been settled. I don't owe anyone anything. No one else is going to be able to, quote, pick this up for the purpose of exploiting my suffering for a financial gain. You name it, they've promised it to me. So today's August the 11th. That's Xavier's birthday. Oh my God, I didn't even say happy birthday. I gotta go, you guys.